You're listening to How to 20-something, the best podcast that helps both men and women navigate their 20s and learn how to adult across all aspects of their lives. We're going to focus on career, relationships, finances, fitness, nutrition, and all of the common challenges and obstacles a typical 20-something will face in this post-college life. I'm your host, Jess Diamond, and I am the CEO and founder of Jess Diamond Coaching, where I help young professionals get their shit together, gain their confidence, and own their life. No one prepares you for this adulting world, so allow me to help you feel like you are no longer a chicken running around with its head cut off, and that you actually know what the hell is going on and what your next step to take is. Welcome to How to 20-something. Welcome back to another episode of How to 20-something, where today I'm going to give you my tips and tricks to landing a full-time job based on how I've seen the job market change, while also taking into account future job markets. Currently, I don't have any business in returning to the corporate world, and if I did, I could see myself as a professor helping college students adult and adapt to transitions. Makes sense? But right now, I'm remaining self-employed. However, a large part of the work I do with my 20-somethings is centered around their career and how basically everything their parents are telling them is not relevant to today's world. Okay, that was an exaggeration. But I will say that no one taught me these tips and tricks, so I went with the default plan of go on Indeed or ZipRecruiter and mass apply to anything and everything that seemed relevant to my degree. And sure, that could work, but if I were to make up a statistic, I'd say there's about a 5% success rate of your resume getting noticed and you getting an interview for a full-time position. I see people on social media constantly talking about how bad the job market is, especially for fresh grads or for someone wanting to change industries, and then they'll follow it up with saying something like, I've applied to 200 jobs in the last month and have either heard nothing or have been rejected. Like, you're wasting your time doing that. Applying online through an Indeed post or even through the company's website is not going to get you very far. Which is why I want to break down what steps I would be taking on a regular basis if I wanted to return to the corporate world in 2025. For starters, I would get really clear on what industry I have any interest in, not based on my degree per se, but what I was okay with focusing on for 40 plus hours a week. Yes, that's a big thing to think about, so let's shrink it down into a bite-sized chunk to get you started. For one, ask yourself, what are you good at? And then, what is a topic you could learn about and not want to shoot your brains out over? And no, it can't be pop culture or crime documentaries, which is why I want you to answer those questions in that order. And it's more so, what subjects were you good at in school or in extracurriculars? Where do your strengths lie? Is it math, reading or writing, sciences, history, arts? For me, I was really good at math, and I thrived in classes like marine science and environmental science in high school. And then when I went to college, my favorite classes were extreme weather and extreme floods. I know. How did I not see the warning signs that interior design was not my forte? I don't know. But you live and you learn, and now I'm here to help you live and learn better than I did. One thing I did always know for myself was that I wanted to be the boss. I'm a little sister, and I hated that everyone was the boss of me growing up. So I would walk around and say, I want to be the boss of me. Meaning, I wanted to be the CEO and run the business. What business? I had no clue. I'm pretty sure I would walk around and say, I want to be a 6-figure CEO of a Fortune 500 company, not fully knowing the words coming out of my mouth. I would never have guessed I was going to own my own business, but here we are. Now, back to you. What classes piqued your interest in high school and or college? And based on those answers you come up with, what industries support those strengths and or interests? Here's another new thing that unfortunately you do have to take into account, and that is based on what you're researching. What is human-based? What do you fully believe will not be eradicated by AI in the next 5 to 10 years? This is a tough part because there is no real way to predict how AI is going to change the job market, but we do know it's going to be extremely disruptive. I can't even tell you what industries definitely won't be taken over by machines, Although I do believe we're always going to need some human component in everything we do, because machines can't replicate empathy or adjust accordingly to other circumstances happening. But it is definitely something you need to keep in mind when conducting your research. And who's to say you need to limit yourself to one industry? I believe everyone is multi-passionate, so pull those passions into some component of the work you do. Like, if you're good at and or enjoy organizing, fitness, painting, and math, then who is to stop you from just selecting one of those fields for work? You've got options. I've always loved the weather and sports/being healthy. And now I'm a personal trainer and a coach, and in my free time, I track weather systems. So from my perspective of doing this exercise and say, I wanted to leave the coaching industry and fitness industry for a full-time job, I would probably switch into meteorology. Now, I know I don't have a degree in it, so part of that research is finding out if I need a degree, if there's a certification I can get, if there's a book I can read, or if there's a job that will get me my foot in the door and then I can learn by doing. I'll ask myself, do I know anyone who is either already in that industry or could connect me with someone in that industry so I could directly ask them about their experience, their history, and their advice for someone wanting to get started? And I do know a meteorologist. I met her in January and we bonded over being weather nerds. I also know 2 news anchors who know meteorologists and could connect me there. Now, you might not know anyone in the industry you're looking for, especially if you're a fresh college grad, in which case I would go on LinkedIn and start connecting with people who are in that industry, maybe that went to your school, and message them, explaining that you're interested in their career choice and their path, and you want to know their background, how they got their foot in the door, and any advice they might want to share with you. This is all research. This is a very big but very important step to make the remaining 4 steps easier. So you have your industry or industries, and you're starting to connect with people already in them to see what qualifications you need or might already have to help you out. That's step 1. Step 2 is going to be curate your resume accordingly. Have a rough outline of past jobs, what you've brought to the table that highlights your strengths and overlap strengths needed in that industry you're wanting to go into. You do not need to include the year you graduate, but it is helpful to include your alma mater, so the school you graduated from, because you never know who is looking at your resume, and if they went to the same school, then you're helping your chances of getting an interview. Speaking from personal experience, the second job I got out of college was partially due to the fact that me and the VP both went to the University of Florida and were in the School of Design, Construction, and Planning. So he already trusted me based on my background. And to that, I say go Gators. But back to your resume. It should include any jobs, club positions if you've graduated within the last 4 years or less, skills, which can vary from Microsoft Suite to DCO oriented, so think program skills and soft skills. And then using me as an example with meteorology and having 0 experience in the field, I would cater my resume to an entry-level position with the goal to work my way up. That means highlighting my organizational skills, teamwork abilities, following directions, classes I took in college. I would look into a certification or even a community college class, as I mentioned earlier, to make my knowledge a bit more relevant and then add that to my resume as well. So now that I've done my research and created a rough resume outline relevant to the industry I'm interested in entering, I'm going to either create a LinkedIn account if I don't have one, or update the one I do have to match my resume updates, as well as begin posting content that is relevant to this new industry. This is articles I come across, podcasts that I've listened to that discuss meteorology, which I don't listen to any meteorology-based podcasts, but I would, my own fascination of storm tracking, or right now with it being hurricane season, I could post updates on systems as they develop. Last year, when Hurricane Helene hit, I was explaining to everyone in Charlotte that would hear me out, that the rain we received in the morning was a weaker cold front moving through, and the rain in the afternoon was the hurricane. And the reason why Asheville was so badly hit was because that cold front, the rain from that cold front stalled for a bit as the 2 different systems started colliding, so they had a very saturated ground, followed by the rainy side of the hurricane, and the results were disastrous. Guys, when I tell you I am a weather nerd, believe me. But back on topic, now that my LinkedIn is filled with relevant content that I'm not going to stop posting, so maybe set a goal of posting twice a week, I'm going to shift my primary focus to building relationships. At this point, I've already been connecting with people online relevant to the industry, like meteorologists, news stations, geographers, environmental scientists. Now here's the part everyone overlooks. The fourth thing I would do to help me land my next full-time job comes in multiple parts. There are 2 parts to this, and then each part has their own subparts. So part 1, on a virtual level, I would look on Indeed for available jobs, but I would not apply right then and there. Instead, I would go to the company's LinkedIn account, immediately follow it, go to where it says people, and connect with as many people as I could. The goal here is to get in contact with a real person. Whether it's a LinkedIn account or an email that isn't HR or like info at or connect at, and start asking them questions. Not questions like, are you hiring? Or I saw this position was open and I'm applying. No, that's fool's play. That's also where a lot of people go wrong. Send messages like, I'm interested in this industry and would love to know how you got started, or if you had any tips for someone looking to enter. You could even say, I'm interested in this company, and say why you're interested in this company. If you have something in common with the connection, and that could be another person, a location, an alma mater, then lead with that. It shows you've done your research and aren't just spamming people's inboxes, even though that's really what you're doing. You have to personalize it as best as you can and not just copy and paste your messages. Yes, it's tedious. Yes, it takes time. Yes, you're probably not going to hear back from a majority of these people. But the ones you do hear back from will help you much more than you sitting by yourself and mass applying. If you come across a job at a company and there are no people listed and the only email you have available is HR and you really want to work there, then apply and send HR an email saying that you applied and why you applied, and end it with a question for them to respond to. Something like, what's the interview process look like? Or how can you stand out as an applicant? Etc., etc. If all you're doing is sending an email saying, hey, I applied and I like this company, you're doing absolutely nothing for yourself besides wasting time, because what is HR going to do with that information? They're not going to read it and be like, oh, wow, they like this company. Let's move them to the interview process. No. Build relationships. Ask questions. Make it personal. Show that you care. The second part of this 4th step is going to in-person events. Not necessarily networking specific events either. I want you to think of networking as any opportunity to build a relationship. It could be a pottery class, a game of soccer, a bar, the park, the gym, and literal networking events. Don't limit yourself to the specifics. Go where people are and have conversations. It doesn't have to be career related all the time, but you need to go in knowing that career has a high chance of coming up, since that is a major focus of people in their 20s and a way for people to try to find a commonality. So, if you're in between jobs or not yet employed, responding with, I'm looking to get into X industry, do you know anyone in that right now that you could connect me with? Will help you with your confidence around going to these events and not feel less than the other people there who are currently employed. You don't have to say you're unemployed or you lost your job. I mean, you can, but in my experience of my own story and with working with many unemployed 20-somethings, it is demoralizing to say over and over again that you don't have a job. So you don't have to say that. You could keep the conversation future-oriented and say what you're looking to do and not where you're currently at. Which brings me to the 5th step I would take when looking for a new job, and that is follow up. Follow up with the people you meet at networking events, follow up with companies that you've applied to, follow up with anyone and everyone. Keep a spreadsheet of who you've connected with, what jobs you've applied to, who you've heard back from, everything, so you know where to follow up and when. This could be connecting with people on LinkedIn that you meet out in the wild. It could also look like sending an email after an interview, thanking them for their time. I just helped a client compose her follow-up email, so she put her best foot forward and is able to say she did everything she could to be considered for the job. Following up is even sending an email or LinkedIn DM if you haven't heard back in an appropriate amount of time, like 1 to 2 weeks, which is why you want a spreadsheet and have everything documented, because you're not going to remember. You cannot rely on memory for this process. On a similar note, you should always ask in an interview when you can expect to hear back and what the interview process looks like, so you don't drive yourself crazy refreshing your email every second of every day, waiting and hoping for a response. And instead, spend your time connecting with other people, building those relationships, having other job opportunities to focus on. It's like if you have an anxious attachment style of dating and you meet someone you like, you should keep dating other people so you don't focus all of your energy on waiting for a text back. That is until you've clarified that you are only seeing one another. Similarly, don't put all your eggs in one basket. Meaning, just because you really, really want one job, meet one person that could help you get connected, have one interview that went well, does not mean you should stop job hunting. Yes, give yourself an afternoon off, celebrate your progress, but then get right back to steps 3, 4, and 5. I'm not going to sugarcoat this. Finding a job in 2025 is difficult, but you're also probably not doing everything you could be to help your chances. Which I want to reiterate what I said at the start of this episode, and that is submitting online applications is not going to get you very far in this job finding process. You have to know people to help you get your foot through the right door. A face-to-face interaction goes a really long way, so don't underestimate the power of physically shaking hands with someone. Anyone. I have a client right now who is so good at this. She goes into companies and just says that she's interested and she wanted to show her face so that they had a face to the name when her application goes through, when her resume pops up. And it's working really well. It's leading to more connections, more information, more development in her career process, and she feels like she's doing something. But that's my advice. Take it or leave it. Although I do suggest you take it if you're part of the 20-something population who has been trying to find a job for quite some time now. Because clearly, what you're doing isn't working. And let me know if you have any other questions. Email me if you want me to review an email you want to send as a follow-up or as a way of connecting. I'd love to help you completely free of charge. My email is in the show notes for you to access, and so you can connect with me. And P.S., I have a lot of connections myself that helps clients get familiarized with the industry they're wanting to get into. But on that note, this does conclude another episode of How to 20-something. If you liked what you heard, learned something new, agree or disagree with what I have to say, then let me know. I'm dying to hear from you. All I ask is you help me out by sharing this episode and telling people this podcast exists for all 20-somethings trying to navigate the most confusing decade of their life. And as always, I can't wait to be in your headphones again next week with another brand new episode.